We have the honor this morning, and welcome again to the session on energy efficiency. We do have the honor this morning of having U.S. EPA Administrator Lisa Jackson make some remarks at the beginning of this session, so we were just waiting for her to come down the hall and begin. When she gets here, I'll introduce her briefly, and then she'll provide some remarks here at the beginning and context. Of course, some of you know already that the U.S. EPA manages the Energy Star program in which this industry is deeply involved. Well, good morning again, everybody. As I was mentioning a moment ago, we have U.S. EPA Administrator Lisa Jackson with us. Administrator Jackson leads EPA's efforts to protect the health and environment for all Americans. She oversees a staff of professionals, 17,000 professionals at EPA, who work across the country in supporting a green economy, addressing health issues and threats from toxins and pollution, and of course, renewing public trust in EPA's work overall. Before becoming EPA Administrator, Lisa Jackson served as the Chief of Staff to New Jersey Governor John Corzine and also the Commissioner of the state's Department of Environmental Protection. And prior to joining that state agency, Administrator Jackson worked for 16 years as an employee of the U.S. EPA. Administrator Jackson announced recently that she is stepping down from EPA, and we certainly want to thank her for her public service to the country. In that long career, we wish her and the EPA a smooth transition as we go forward. And on behalf of the Consumer Electronics Association, I'd like to welcome Administrator Jackson again to CES, thank her for being here, and we look forward to your opening remarks.
Thanks, Doug. Thanks for waiting for me. Good morning, everyone. And I'm really happy to be with you today. Good morning, panel. I'm sorry I didn't get a chance to greet each one of you, but I would love a picture, so I'm going to take departing cabinet member prerogative because I'm going to run to another session. I think my job here this morning is to just give you a couple of thoughts on energy efficiency. It's an important conversation, and I wouldn't pretend to know as much as the amazing panel that has been assembled this morning. But I do know that we have complex environmental and economic challenges, and I do know that energy efficiency is at the heart of the solutions for many of the challenges that we face. The President has called on us to embrace energy efficiency as one of the fastest and easiest ways to prevent pollution. That's why I like it so much, but also, and importantly, to create jobs and to save money. In an all-of-the-above energy strategy, energy efficiency is part of the all. It is front and center. Part of that means presenting Americans with more cost-effective ways to save energy, not just at home, but at work as well, and in our communities. Two decades ago, we began an effort with consumers and American businesses to help consumers primarily make energy-efficient choices, to help cut costs and reduce air pollution. And people are often surprised to find out that Energy Star is an EPA brand, but it was EPA's innovative way at the time, 2 decades ago, to deal with air pollution by helping a consumer make smarter choices, choices that would be good for them, for their family, for their pocketbook. 20 years later, Energy Star and its vast network of partners have helped American families and businesses now save a combined total of nearly $230 billion on utility bills, while keeping more than 1.7 billion metric tons of greenhouse gas emissions from entering our skies. That's really more important a concept and a goal than it's ever been. Today's consumers and companies are facing increasingly complex environmental and economic decisions. From the first Energy Star qualified computer in 1992, to the 40,000 products in more than 65 different categories that bear the Energy Star label today, the program's public-private partnerships have led to significant cost savings and environmental benefits for consumers. And they've done so while preserving or enhancing the features and functionalities of products that are labeled and have chosen to label themselves Energy Star. Take one of the stars of this conference, for example, the television. Even as picture quality and screen size have certainly increased dramatically over the last 5 years, TV manufacturers have seen the value and importance of making energy efficiency a priority. Since 2008, the power used by an Energy Star qualified large screen TV has dropped from as much as 500 watts to just over 100 watts. And EPA projects that electricity used for TVs in the US is 36 billion kilowatt hours per year, less than it might have been. It's always hard to know what that elusive baseline is. Thank you. My staff will be thrilled that there's one Energy Star fan in the audience. But it's always hard to predict what business as usual might have been because innovations do happen so quickly. But if nothing else, I think Energy Star and programs like it, they're public-private partnerships that help consumers and businesses recognize something that should be recognizable on an individual basis, but puts it in a way that makes it pretty compelling, whether it's your pocketbook or a concern for the environment. As the industry strives for greater efficiency in its products, and the industry is striving, so you are to be commended on the private sector side for recognizing the opportunity and the ability to do more with less. EPA is proud to highlight the most innovative products for consumers. A growing list of TVs, but also computer monitors and other products are now being recognized by EPA in its new category of Energy Star's Most Efficient 2013. I'm really happy to see this extension of the Energy Star label. I was just in a small working group, and I think there were lots of concepts about how to extend Energy Star, but we've landed on this Most Efficient 2013. It highlights the best of the best each year. It's nothing like a little friendly competition. I think that's what this whole conference is about. And we look forward to more exciting advances in product efficiencies as a result. It's the innovation and drive of industry and the feedback that we've received as the Energy Star program evolves and grows that makes for the important and unique synergy that is energy efficiency through the Energy Star program. I think it's been instrumental in success to date. I think it's about collaboration, but it's not just industry. It actually includes academia as well, other sectors who are really critical to a real energy efficient future and a cleaner future at that. That's why I'm happy to be here to at least launch the discussion and salute the folks who are out in the field really practicing and putting to work what a public-private partnership looks like. So thanks, Doug. Thanks very much, and I'll turn it back over to you.
Thank you, Minister. If the audience will indulge us for just a minute, we'll get a group picture and say goodbye to the administrator and then proceed with the panel. So just one moment, please.
Thank you.
It's an honor to have a cabinet official here at the show, and certainly to begin our session on energy efficiency in a very relevant way. We're also grateful for a terrific panel of 6 experts with different perspectives on the topic of energy efficiency, who over the course of the remaining time here will give us their perspectives and a sense of their experience and contributions to the cause of efficiency in the consumer electronics world. I'd like to take a minute here, and the panel knows, to give brief introductions, self-introductions. We'll go right down the line, but you can save your content for the discussion because I feel that we're going to bring that out and back and forth among the panelists. I also want to reserve the last 10 or 15 minutes of our session for questions from the audience because I'm well aware that, as the administrator said, some of you work directly on programs related to energy efficiency. Some of you support those programs. Others of you are interested in those, and some of you are with companies making products that are efficient. So we want to reserve the time for questions from the audience as well. So let's begin right here to my left with Steve Dulac at DirecTV. Steve?
Oh, hi, everybody. I'm very glad to be here and honored to be here with such a group of great people. DirecTV is a Energy Star partner. We've been a partner since 2009 and couldn't be happier with the relationship. It's a very, very important relationship to us. Brand is very important to many of the companies that are here at CES. It's especially important to DirecTV, and the brand recognition of Energy Star is very, very important to us. Energy Star has an aided recognition of something like greater than 80%, and it's still growing, and that's super important to us. DirecTV is also a member of something called the Set-Top Box Energy Efficiency Voluntary Agreement that was recently announced. We're also very proud to be part of that group as well. Thank you.
Thank you. My name is John Fairhurst. I'm from a research lab for Sharp, so it's Sharp Labs of America. I wear two hats today. So on the one hat, it says Sharp on it. So I do energy, environment, and television standards for our lab here. My other roles have to do with both CEA and IEC. I chair various standards groups, working on a number of different projects, and most importantly, doing the standards for television efficiency, or television power measurement, actually. So we started work in 2005 and completed the work, really 2006, completed the work in 2008. That led to, that was the baseline on which Energy Star 3.0 was based, and hence 4.0, 5.0, 5.3, 6.0. And I'm also working with CEA and IEC to do the next generation on which DOE's test procedure will be based. So as we talk about the savings of television, you have to have a way to measure it first, and so that's been my main role.
Good afternoon. My name is Michael Rubio. I have the distinct honor of serving in the California State Senate, where I chair the Environmental Quality Committee, also sit on the Energy Committee, and work closely with the three responsible entities to promote energy conservation, the California Public Utilities Commission, the California Energy Commission, and of course the California Air Resources Board, and it's an honor to be here, Doug. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator.
Hello all. My name is Kavita Ravi. I'm a AAAS fellow at the U.S. Department of Energy. I work in the Office of Policy and International Affairs on an international initiative for promoting appliance, equipment, and electronics energy efficiency. Just a caveat here, I do not represent the regulatory side of the Appliance Standards Program in the DOE. Like I said, we work on this international initiative, and we are very proud today to also launch a competition that promotes energy efficiency for displays, which I hope to provide some more detail about going forth. And of course, this is a competition that complements many of the Energy Star efforts. And also thanks to John Fairhurst, our first round of competition was on TVs, where we used the IEC test procedure that I'm sure John worked on. Thank you all.
Good afternoon. My name is Floyd Deschamps, and I'm with the Alliance to Save Energy. The Alliance is a nonprofit based in Washington, D.C., and our mission is focused on energy efficiency and how do we go about advocating for that. So I head up the policy and the research area. We do a lot of work with the Congress, with the federal agencies as well. But the Alliance overall not only works in policy, we do a lot of work internationally, a lot in the water programs. We do a lot of work with the states in building codes and those applications, also with the education area, working with schools and campuses to become more energy efficient. So we are governed by a board of directors which is led by Tom King of National Grid and Senator Warner, who heads our honorary board, Senator Warner of Virginia, excuse me. And also we have an associate program that's comprised of about 150, 160 companies and organizations that have an interest in energy efficiency. Thank you.
I'm Paul Glist. I'm a lawyer at Davis Wright Tremaine in Washington, D.C. I'm mostly known for cable and internet work, but I'm here because I helped expand a cable energy initiative into the set-top box voluntary agreement that brought together the top 10 video service providers and their major equipment suppliers into a voluntary energy initiative this last year.
Thank you, Paul, and thank you, panel. We've seen, many of us have seen energy efficiency highlights in the show floor. There are tremendous innovations in general across the show floor, but some of them have to do with sustainability and efficiency. We've also heard energy efficiency mentioned in some keynote addresses as well. But given that this session is part of our Innovation Policy Summit track, and I'd like to steer the discussion toward policy in different ways in the next several minutes. Let me begin by asking a couple of our panelists to perhaps give us a sense of the context here, the policy context, the policy environment regarding energy efficiency. And I'd like to ask both Floyd and Senator Rubio to comment from their perspectives. Floyd, I know the Alliance is certainly very active at the national level and also internationally in some cases too with conferences. So you certainly have a good sense of policy work in DC and elsewhere. And then Senator Rubio, California is often known as a leader in various ways that would certainly include the environment and energy, and I'd like to get your kind of sense of where the state's coming from and what's important to the state. So let's begin with Floyd for some remarks on that.
Okay, great. Thank you. Let me just mention, I think, given the the nation watched as the Congress worked its way over the past 2 years into gridlock, so to speak. But anyway, I think we were encouraged because we were able to get some legislation that's on energy efficiency. Although it was very small late last year, we were able to get something through, and it was done on a bipartisan basis as well. So in addition to that, with the fiscal cliff legislation, there was some of the tax extenders for energy efficiency that was also brought forth. So it's been a very challenging fight, should I say, over the past 2 years, but we're also looking we're not only looking at where we are, but also where we want to go. And one initiative I would like to mention is the Alliance. About a year ago, we pulled together a national commission that is chaired by our board chairs, actually, Tom King with National Grid and Senator Warner of Virginia. And we pulled together this commission that's comprised of utility execs and national lab directors and also some environmentalists as well as some technology officers from some leading organization, and we call it the Alliance Commission on National Energy Efficiency Policy. So what we're trying to do with, with this commission is develop the next generation of energy efficiency policies. So what we've done is taken a look across the economy at the various sectors and develop recommendations. Although we haven't released those recommendations, we hope to do so on February the 6th. So, and I think what you'll see there is, again, recommendations from the various sectors representing where we may want to go in the next 15 to 20 years as far as energy efficiency. We've accomplished a lot over the past 20, 25 years, and actually Alliance has been around for 35 years, but I think we want to take a look forward as to where we want to go next, and I think that'll be coming out again on February 6th. So, and I think there will be some great things, some new ideas coming out of that, and we hope to, again, use that as a foundation for a lot of the efficiency work the Alliance will be involved with for the next several years.
Thanks, Floyd. If I may just follow up on that briefly, your recommendation is not yet announced. Do you consider policies and programs relevant to the tech industry in these recommendations?
I guess it depends on how you define that. I mean, we looked across different economic sectors, whether it was in the manufacturing sector, power generation, buildings, so on and so forth. And one of the things that I'm beginning to learn, and as we see more, the electronics or the IT sector is becoming more of an enabling technology for many of these industries. Maybe from a micro level, but we did look at that. I think one key component of that, or one major part of that, is we looked at the deployment of smart grid within the power generation sector. And I think of smart grid as sort of the partnership between the IT sector and the power generation sector. Very different cultures, and as we work through that now, we're beginning to understand some of the challenges of bringing very different cultures together.
Thank you. Senator Rubio.
Thank you, Doug. I'd like to start from a very broad perspective and then bring it down, narrow to where I think it's pertinent for this afternoon. California, as you know, has led the effort on global warming fight with the passage of AB 32, It has similarly led the effort with our very aggressive 33% renewable portfolio standard. What that means, though, for us and our energy departments, whether it's the PUC, the CEC, or CAISO, when they look to forecasting for our state to ensure that we're going to have a reliable grid, and when everyone needs electricity, they can turn the lights on, they determine how they're going to integrate the intermittent power, have base load power, and make it all work. An important component of it is energy conservation and energy efficiency. So you have one entity that literally says, we're going to be able to have a future energy usage of X because we will conserve and provide energy efficiency programs through new building code structures and regulations, and that's the task of the California Energy Commission. Then you go to the Energy Commission and you say, how are you going to accomplish that? And they say, we haven't figured that one out yet. And so in a nutshell, it creates a tremendous amount of stress and tension to a regulatory body for which the legislature, wrongly I might add, and that's a big statement, in essentially giving all the authority and ability to this one entity to then try to close that gap or fill that gap with energy efficiencies so that we don't have to build another gas-fired generation facility, which we know we're going to have to build probably between 5 and 8 in the very near future to make the integration of the intermittent power work. It creates a tremendous amount of burden on that one regulatory agency, and they'll do it. And it's very difficult to do it with the consideration of the economic impacts. And second, without removing the ingenuity or the genius of having a capital market and allowing people in the private sector to compete against one another so that whenever you've got the little sticker on your television or refrigerator or pretty soon whatever else it might be, that you let the consumer decide and you don't stymie the innovation and the growth that we know that has made this country the beacon for everyone in the world. And so that, in a nutshell, is how it's provided the policies that have passed both from a broad sense on global warming to renewable portfolio standards has created a tremendous amount of stress on bringing about energy efficiencies on consumer products because they need to score it and enable for the larger program to work.
Thank you, Senator. Let me turn now to our two industry participants on this panel with DirecTV and Sharp for their perspective, really how these two companies are contributing to energy efficiency through policies and programs, through technology developments as well. So let's start with you, Steve.
All right, well, thank you, Doug. I think one of the great things that sort of a newbie to this, thank you, that a newbie to this process can bring, and DirecTV is new at this, only being involved in this community since 2009. There's so many things that a service provider has in the way of strength. So we not only deploy products into the home, but we also have great marketing strengths as well as a great presence, a continuous presence with our customers from month-to-month basis, and we have opportunities to visit their homes. And so one of the, I think, a great opportunity that gives us, I have a lot of confidence that it's going to play out very successfully in upcoming years, is that we can help that customer, like Senator Rubio was saying, understand the kinds of things that they can do to contribute to the solution. And one of those areas might be encouraging energy efficiency, taking a look around the house and auditing the house and seeing what we can do, and then also perhaps even encouraging the installation of more efficient products and even control systems that can allow those products to be controlled better. So we're very excited about that potential. Another area that I think is very, very important looking forward is the area of connected devices. We hear about it over and over again here at International CES, all the ways in which devices are able to connect to each other. And John gets to talk about the great success story with TV so far, and I, as a set-top box supplier, can talk about the wonderful potential for set-top boxes to disappear into the television set as they become more and more capable. It's a thrilling opportunity for us, and is a great potential in terms of energy efficiency.
Thank you. Quite literally, TVs are a big story at this show. So, John, from that perspective, what is Sharp doing to advance energy efficiency, not only in TVs, but across its product line?
Right, so as I mentioned, part of the investment is sending me and others to do standards work, as well as other manufacturers. I see a number of faces in the room of people who have contributed to the standards, and it's not just industry in those meetings. While industry might chair it, CEA has a tech and standards group that is ANSI certified to do standards. So we bring in people from outside of industry. We work towards 100% agreement on our standards to pass them. That's the goal. And in fact, we did get that with the IEC standard as well. That was 100% unanimous voting. On the technology side, of course, we've seen the move in the marketplace from the CCFL backlit televisions to the LED backlit televisions. The savings are huge. As was mentioned earlier, televisions that were taking 500 watts before are now taking over 100. There was a statement by NRDC last year that we have 42-inch models that were taking 400 watts and now 100 watts. In the case of Sharp, we've moved well past that. We've got an 80-inch model that takes under 100 watts. 80 inches is literally 4 times as large as a 40-inch television. So it's really staggering, and the savings continue. So not only have there been technology moves to date, like those, the backlight driven by the LEDs, but we've also got IGZO technology coming. That's going to allow us to go to higher resolutions. It allows more transparency through the panels, so you get more light transmission. More light means you need less. More light transmitted means you need less light in the back, and that means lower power. And I should mention a lower power supply. One of the things that drives manufacturers is cost, and frankly, we've saved a lot of money too by making our products more efficient. If you can imagine what a 500-watt power supply costs and how big it is when you want to make your TV thin, the heat sinks you need, all of the problems that you have from an engineering standpoint, as compared to a 100 or 50-watt power supply, it's a huge benefit for industry. So even where we are with, regardless of the policy, we're going to continue to reduce the power because it's in our best interest.
Thank you, John. You mentioned before, you talked about Sharp's initiatives and achievements, the work that's been done at a broader industry level with respect to standard ways of measuring power consumption in televisions and other products. I'd like to turn to Paul Glist, because he represents an industry sector and a perspective that has made an enormous contribution in another product category called set-top boxes. If consumer electronics are 13% of residential electricity use, inside that 13% slice of the pie, the relative big three really are televisions, computers, and set-top boxes. So let's hear what's going on with regard to initiatives on set-top boxes.
So I mentioned in the intro that the top 10 multi-channel video providers and their major suppliers had come together in a 5-year voluntary agreement late last year. It's effective now, January 1 of this year. And it has very important elements to it to reduce the energy signature of all of these devices. First of all, the scope of that community, we're talking about more than 90 million households that we are moving into an energy efficiency mode. And we're doing it by taking the Energy Star V3 standard, which was designed for the top quarter devices, and making that the norm across all boxes. We're bringing light sleep and auto power down into the boxes. We're introducing whole home DVRs as a way of reducing the number of spinning discs inside the home. We're committed to a field trial of next-gen deep sleep boxes at the end of 2014, so that a box can go into a very low power consumption state and still keep the heartbeat of the network that it needs to make the architecture work. And I think some of the key features to me are that this is effective now. This is 5 years earlier than the Department of Energy standard could take effect. So it's faster right off the bat. Secondly, we've created a vehicle through a steering committee of all of these providers and their suppliers to keep updating these with the science over the course of this time, so that it's flexible not only in being able to accommodate the many different architectures and software stacks and OSs and CPE that's involved in these different industries, but flexible across time to be able to adjust very rapidly. And because we spend a lot of time visiting with, working with the energy advocates, we have brought in all of the accountability and transparency measures that you would ordinarily see in a regulatory program, but we're doing it voluntarily. So there is testing and auditable reports and field verification and annual reports on how the industry is doing and what's the aggregate impact on power producers, and posting of consumption data to consumers so that they know if they're taking service from Direct or Comcast, what that means from an energy point of view. And so all of that, it's created a mechanism for delivering energy efficiencies quickly and flexibly without sacrificing innovation and competition. And I think that's something that all of the participants in this arrangement should be proud of.
Thank you, Paul. And before I turn back to Floyd, Kavita, and Senator Rubio, let me just follow up on that a bit. This voluntary initiative obviously is meaningful in several dimensions, but can you link it to activities at the international level? Because we've heard that there obviously is a lot of policy making going on at state, federal, international levels. So what models does this present, really?
So we had the good fortune of having seen the European Voluntary Agreement, which was just approved by the European community as a faster and more effective and lower cost method for reducing the energy consumption of set-top boxes in the EU. Australia also followed that model. And so this is the third major national vehicle that follows in that same format. And I think this really is a good example to the international community of how you can achieve common efficiency goals without introducing a lot of balkanization of test methods or screwing up the supply chain or suppressing innovation or affecting competition. So we now have 3 major national models around the world of how to do this.
Thank you. This is certainly a very international trade show and could very well be an international audience here in the room representing different countries and regions. Kavita, your part of the Department of Energy is focused on reaching out to other countries, coordinating efforts, even rewarding some initiatives. So could you, I guess, further the discussion on the international front by explaining really what DOE is doing in this area? And then I'd like to throw it over to the Senator for a California view on that, because obviously his focus is state or regional, and then Floyd for some overarching comments. So keep it, please.
Thank you, Doug. So it is my pleasure to talk about the initiative that we are involved in. It is called the Super Efficient Equipment and Appliance Deployment Initiative. The acronym that we have for it is SEAD, S-E-A-D. It is an initiative that brings together 16 countries, and they have expressed a voluntary interest in participating in this. So there's really a wide interest in participating in appliance equipment and electronic efficiency promotion from the different countries across the world. And I might add that these 16 countries are major economies. Excuse me. The mode of participation is, as I mentioned, voluntary and is through peer-to-peer collaboration. And under this initiative, we have 5 different activities through which we try to promote appliance efficiency, and they try to achieve the following 3 goals. The first, to highlight and promote energy efficiency of appliances, equipment, and electronics to consumers and broadly all stakeholders, industry, government, nonprofit organizations, and consumers. Strengthen foundations of with cross-cutting technical analysis. So this is really trying to uncover energy use of products and being able to package that information for actionable items by, again, governments or consumers or industry, and then exchange of technical information on standards to accelerate progress in the different countries. One of the activities that we are quite proud of and is a cornerstone activity is this awards program that I referred to earlier. We ran, so this is an awards program that promotes energy efficient products. The first round of this competition is, we launched at the CES last year, and we announced winners in October, and this was focused on energy efficient flat panel televisions. And we measured the efficiency of such TVs using the IEC 62087 procedure, which is internationally accepted. This was run in 4 regions across the world: Australia, Europe, India, and North America, in 3 size categories, and involved a total of 16 awards for both commercially available televisions as well as emerging technologies. So that's just to give you a flavor of the kinds of activities that we're involved in. We're very excited to launch our second round, which is on displays. And the displays work really builds off of the flat panel televisions work, since the technology is so close. Again, in 4 regions, 3 size categories, and including an emerging technology category. And the countries that come to the table at for the awards are very excited. For instance, India spent $100,000, I think, the equivalent of $100,000, advertising the winners. So really, governments are motivated and excited to promote energy efficiency and use these market transformation mechanisms to showcase the leaders in energy efficiency. The Europeans announced their winners at the IFA fair, which is the European equivalent of the CES fair. So again, all-around excitement on government's part to highlight highly efficient products and leaders in energy efficiency.
Thank you, Kavita. I know you cannot speak to DOE's policy side, I mean the standards development work that goes on with appliance efficiency standards, but Floyd, from the Alliance to Save Energy's perspective, how significant, maybe it's even reflected in your recommendations forthcoming, how significant is policy coordination with respect to U.S. policy and energy efficiency as it relates to certain industry sectors and what's going on around the world?
Sure. I think the coordination is absolutely essential. Excuse me. I think of I guess I'll use the term sustainable regulation, and I think of that as having sort of three components or 3 criteria to be, or 3 concern areas. And I think it's technology, the economy, and the consumers. And I think you have to balance all of those 3. And if you have one out of balance, it's a matter of time before the whole regulation just doesn't work. I think in looking at the DOE regulation, which is based on statutory or public law, they're estimating that the savings from those standards are expected to be about $1.3 million by the year 2030, cumulative, 1.3, not million, but $1.3 trillion. And I think in today's economy, that's something worth pursuing. And I think the work that DOE is doing, I think there's a lot of support for that. And as Administrator Jackson highlighted, when you generate those type of savings, you're building the economy, you're creating new jobs, you're improving the environment from the reduced energy use and associated pollution and emissions associated with that. So I think I'm trying to remember the rest of your question, but I think I touched upon it.
Yeah, coordination, harmonization.
Yeah, coordination, I'm sorry. Yes, and I mean, what we've done as far as the Alliance and even some of the other efficiency advocates in Washington, we try to get together with the manufacturers to understand the environment in which these regulations would apply. And I think once we work with them, manufacturers through the different associations, to reach an agreement on these standards. And then once we have that agreement, we have that consensus built around it, we're able to go back to DOE or even go to the Congress and say that here's what the new proposals are. here's the consensus that we've reached, here's the process that we've used to generate these standards. And usually, when you've done that type of homework, the receptivity to these new ideas are very high.
Thank you. Senator Rubio, you've got certainly a state perspective in mind, but perhaps broader than that yourself. However, you do have the agency you mentioned earlier in your opening remarks, the California Energy Commission, which it's fair to say is a very eager agency when it comes to energy efficiency. Knowing that our industry must operate internationally, certainly nationally, but regionally, internationally, it's fair to say it's a challenge to do energy efficiency policy piecemeal and patchwork. What's your perspective from an international dimension, as you've heard, with regard to where California really should be going with respect to this industry?
To link what two individuals just said that preceded me, I think certainly California with CEC is eager to develop the sustainable regulation. That's an interesting term I had not heard until today. But I like to make things very simple here. How many here remember what a dial tone sound like? Okay. We just brought on a new fellow who had never heard a dial tone. My daughter will never know what a dial tone is. We recently, I co-authored a bill in the state Senate last year that said California would not regulate VoIP, or Voice over Internet Protocol, because that was better done at the federal level. It would be duplication. Furthermore, we couldn't keep up with currently could be done. And so that was a very contentious and controversial piece of legislation, because California should regulate those things. And so not only is it a question of sustainable regulation, but it is, should we have a certain regulation scheme? Furthermore, who should establish it? Should it be at the international level, the national level? Because let's face it, we're moving from a toaster to a microwave to an iPhone generation now. You already can turn off your AC unit. I can tip something to feed my dog with an app on my iPhone now. These things are moving rapidly every minute, and it is difficult if you think that an individual state can set forth regulations that could then drive the entire global market. Unfortunately, though, that's a big debate, because let's be very frank and honest with each other today. There are many who believe that it should start somewhere so that you can become that leader, and then it would spread throughout the globe. That's a big debate. I personally believe that we have to set forth, differentiate these regulatory goals that we have in energy efficiencies, see to it that we provide the appropriate bodies so that we don't stymie the innovation for those of you who are trying to develop the best product for the consumer for tomorrow.
Thank you, Senator. Innovation is certainly the lifeblood of the consumer electronics industry. I'd like to turn to Steve and John now with their company perspectives and ask them, in light of the policy challenges that we have at different levels of government, what's the optimum path for your companies with respect to policy making or outcomes or harmonization? The last thing we need, of course, is regulatory competition. We want industry competition, but how do we get there?
Yes, I think that's an excellent question. The idea of where does the leadership first come from? In our case, it's clear that the leadership comes from voluntary programs as a starting point, and it can even wrap up with voluntary programs. The Energy Star program, it's a big carrot. It really is, and you can ask across all kinds of different industries whether this is something that's worth doing, and the answer is yes. But one of the most important aspects of this carrot is the fact that a company can choose to participate or not. They can choose to chase that down, spend those kinds of resources, and earn that brand and share it with their customers. That's the best way to across state lines and to essentially to create leadership that then is reflected worldwide. We love the idea that Energy Star targets at 25% or no more than 25% of a market, and then as products evolve and get better and better, Energy Star updates its limits, its guidelines for what is allowed to still be Energy Star. So on a regular basis, in the case of set-top boxes, it's less than 2-year cycle times, which is a frenetic pace, but we do our best to hang on to that. We're seeing big increases in that. And then you can have voluntary programs like the one that we just announced with the set-top boxes, where a 90% commitment is made. And that really is sort of following up, mopping up behind. So you have got Energy Star pulling us along with the carrot, and then essentially industry showing the right kind of the integrity and sharing of those capabilities that were introduced thanks to Energy Star, and making sure that that was rolled in at an appropriate time into the great majority of their devices. So we think that that's the right approach, not to have a one portion of the world consider itself a regulatory leader causing everybody to follow, but instead use voluntary programs to create that leadership, create those changes in those products that can then flow everywhere else.
John, what is Sharp's perspective?
Yeah, to give you an idea of how dynamic the TV market is, I mentioned earlier we went from Energy Star 3, 4, 5, 5.3, now we're coming out with 6. That's from 2008 to 2013. In addition, we've had, I think it's at least 2 years of the most efficient standard in there. So that's like 8 different levels that we've been looking at for Energy Star. And that's been necessary because the TV market has moved so rapidly. In fact, numbers, I forgot to mention earlier, the numbers from EPA is that TVs have saved, the TV increased efficiency has saved $3.5 billion a year within the US alone. And it's the equivalent of taking 4.5 million vehicles off the road. So it's just been huge, and that's due to this huge carrot that Steve mentioned. Energy Star's goal is to have 25% of products meet the standard, but to give you an idea, Sharp's 2013 product, I'm sorry to say this to EPA, but all of our products except for the 90-inch TV are already going to meet it. So that's how absolutely dynamic it is. But in the middle of the market, we also have the FTC Energy Guide label. So go into any retail outlet, look at the TVs, and there it is. Not only can you see that this one meets Energy Star, that one doesn't, but even when we're all meeting it, or at least most, if not all of Sharp's are meeting it, the consumer can then look TV to TV and see what's going on. So then when we talk about regulation, the CEC did put in a regulation in California. It hasn't really been the key point that's driven the industry forward. It has a cutoff. It only regulates televisions below 58 inches. We have a 70-inch television that last year's model took 64 watts, well beyond what CEC regulated. They're not able to do things quickly enough to really keep up with the market. So the CEC's regulations were not the driver. Anyone who tells you it is, look at what we're doing on the larger screen sizes and realize that the CEC regulations were not involved in that. And then to give you an idea of what we really want to avoid as far as regulation, on the accessibility front, there have been people who have said for years, oh, we want a direct button on the remote that does this function or that function. And if you had put those regulations in on some products, you wouldn't have touch screens. Now, the blind community looked at touchscreens and said, oh, these are terrible. We don't want them. How can a blind person possibly operate a touchscreen? Well, just the end of last year, I had dinner with Paul Schrader of the American Federation of the Blind. He says now 90% of blind people own iPhones, and the other 10% really want them. And it's because they have new innovations. There's the voice control that allows you to use it. So any regulation that would have said you need a button would have made no sense. It would have been obsolete. So we really need to be careful not to get in the way of innovation.
Let me return to that point about innovation and turn to Paul Glist again, who spoke of this industry voluntary agreement that's now in effect as of a few days ago. You've heard the policy challenges here down the line. Paul, how does that voluntary agreement, you mentioned how it delivers savings faster than traditional policy at the federal level would. How is it really protecting innovation, however?
So one of the big differences between the carrot approach, like Energy Star, and the stick approach of minimum standards that DOE might apply to a refrigerator, as an example, is that there's a very high level of risk of getting it wrong if you set a floor and you try to micromanage the technology. We've lived with this in many spheres outside of the energy efficiency community, where the government thought that it knew the marketplace answer, and it would say something like, I enshrine and rule that the digital connector is 1394, right? Well, it didn't work out that way, right? And yet it stayed on the books for many, many years and was actually an impediment to a lot of developments. And so when you set a floor, number one, I think that if you can do it through voluntary measures this way, you're not even talking about a negotiated rulemaking, because you can avoid the unintended consequences by creating a body that is fast on its feet, knows what the goals are, can keep up with the science, and if something unexpected turns up in the market, it can adjust very rapidly. And I think that's the hallmark of a good approach to minimum standards.
Okay, thank you. We have just under 10 minutes left, and as I mentioned at the beginning, I did want to break at this point and turn it over to the questions from the audience, if there are any of any of these panelists on issues you've heard or things you've thought about during the discussion. We do have a microphone, I believe, do we, up front here? So if you have a question, please introduce yourself and ask it. Are there any questions from the audience at this point? Right up here.
A question for the panelists on the right. Could you clarify how your initiative differs or feeds into Energy Star activities with set-top boxes?
This has the largest video providers agreeing to make Energy Star V3 the table stakes for boxes to be deployed after 2013 in the home. So that one thing right off the bat is it takes something designed for 25% and makes it the norm. That's one principal difference. The other is that it makes voluntary commitments in a whole set of other areas, like whole home DVR, auto power down, light sleep, deployed to legacy devices. That's something a rule couldn't do. Yet right now, the cable industry is changing head ends and deploying software into legacy boxes to put them into light sleep when they're not in use. So these are very different from an Energy Star program. The other thing is that because it creates this separate vehicle for updating minimum standards with the science for all of the devices out there, it is in many ways more aggressive and more far-reaching than Energy Star has been. And the upshot of that is just phase one of the voluntary agreement is $1.5 billion savings to consumers in residential energy. 4 power plants, all the greenhouse gases associated with that, and that's just the start.
Thank you. We have another question in the back, please.
Hi, I'm Noah Horowitz with NRDC, the Natural Resources Defense Council. I've been involved in a lot of the initiatives, and I agree completely there's been a lot of great progress. I want to encourage people to not frame this as simply it's voluntary or mandatory. It's either or, and we shouldn't do mandatory. We can only do voluntary. I think there's a role for Energy Star. There's a role for rebates. There's a role for standards. And the way that the standards are set up, they're performance-based. It says for a TV this size, here's your power budget. You could get there any way you want, whether you want to be LED, plasma, put in a different film. So this stifling innovation, I think we have to be real careful. That's not what we want to see either. And when we were going, if we go back to 2004 on TVs, I went around this show, I was seeing, you know, the first big screen TVs. How much power does your TV use? Oh, it's very powerful. The manufacturers didn't even know how much energy there was. California started that debate, set some standards, you blew them out. Congratulations to you, but it really wasn't even on the agenda when we started. And we heard that.
Is there a question here? I'm sorry.
It's coming, yes. We heard it was going to stifle innovation. we were going to lose 5,000 jobs. None of that happened. So the question I want to ask is, we now have 3D TV, internet-enabled TVs, LED backlights, the list goes on. So what innovation has been stifled, whether it's refrigerator standard, TVs, clothes washers? I hope we be careful here in the discussion. So I turn that back to you. Thanks.
Anybody want to respond
Well, I can take a shot at it.
Sure, Senator.
Since California really led the effort on a lot of this, I think you got to consider two things. One, I want to preface it with, I've got a very good working relationship with the NRC, and thank you for the work that you do. But what is the role of government, fundamentally? It's either A, to partner and see to it that we find a better path to accomplish what we would like to do, and that is reduce global warming impacts, the impact on the environment, et cetera, and improve a product for the consumer. Or second, we can have an adversarial role. And I look at it in those two instances versus mandatory versus volunteer. But it's a very slippery slope, because in California, we have one of the most progressive laws called the California Environmental Quality Act, in which we do what you just said in developing standards. But now the question is, once you meet that standard, what should it mean for you as a public and private entity? And so that's a very larger discussion that we ought to have over a lot of wine and some good food one of these days. But you asked the question, what was stymied? All of the items that you mentioned, let's just look at the iPhone. You talk to Steve Jobs, or you read his interviews, rest in peace, Steve Jobs. He said, and he told the President of the United States, this iPhone will never be made in the United States of America again, because it's the lack of certainty that the regulatory scheme has created for Apple. Now, keep in mind, they built Apple in a building for which they were constructing on the second, third, or fourth floor. I can't recall exactly what it was. You would never be able to do that in California. And so because they found an environment where the regulatory scheme allowed them to push the envelope, they were able to think of it in Silicon Valley, but then build it somewhere else. And so it's been able to combine the different regulatory schemes that has allowed us to enjoy something as great as the iPhone. And so if everybody adopted what California has adopted, I am very willing to debate that it would stymie innovation. We would think of it, but we wouldn't be able to scale up and create it so that it is in the consumer's hand.
Steve, I think you had a comment as well, and also down the line in a moment, too.
Yes, I'd like to sort of give a corollary to from the set-top box point of view. So the California Energy Commission did start an initiative looking at perhaps regulating set-top boxes. And the two ideas that were put forth by folks such as NRDC were, perhaps we could have a standby power limit of less than a certain number of watts, or perhaps we could baseline Energy Star 3 as the limit for any box built in California. And so those sound like two nice ideas. DirecTV came out with a new product, DirecTV Genie. It's our whole home DVR product, came out last year. That product would not have been able to be released in California if either of those ideas, and those were the only two ideas that came from that community, were actually been turned into law. So it's an example where our most innovative and actually most popular product right now would have been blocked for some amount of time from being put into the market. This box does not need Energy Star 3, and this box does not have the standby power even close to what had been proposed. So there's just a practical example of where, and forgive me, and the most important news about this whole home DVR is that because it works with very thin clients and uses a technology that can be built into TVs, speaking from the perspective of the entire household, this is a much more efficient, energy efficient solution than our current and previous solutions. So it's an example where the regulation would have had an unfortunate result in terms of energy efficiency.
We just have a couple of minutes left. Kavita, did you have a quick comment? Because I know we have one more question here in the audience.
Right. I want to support actually what Noah said, which is that we need many tools in the box. I used to be a hardware design engineer. I worked on algorithms, and I can tell you, at least in these Intel chips and the iPhone that Senator Rubio was referring to, it's not searing a hole in your pocket or your thigh, because they are able to turn parts of the chip off that are not being used. You can think of it as turning lights off in rooms that you're not in. And so I will contend that not all, I mean, innovation is not stymied by energy efficiency. There are ways of doing it. It's just whether there are incentives to do it. I mean, there are classic market failures that where consumers are unaware of how much they're paying for their set-top boxes being on all the time, and therefore not demanding energy efficiency. The cable company is not paying the bill, so they're not interested. And this was what caused this situation. And kudos to the companies that came together for these voluntary agreements. But it is really a myth that energy efficiency stymies innovation.
I would love to delve into this further. I do want to respect the question here in the audience, though.
My name is Mohammed Azam. I'm from Egypt. What I can see now is only short term. We are talking all the time about energy saving. What about the long term? What about having innovation area of sustainable, renewable energy for consumer electronics? I don't see this in the picture or through the discussions. What do you have about that?
Go ahead, Paul.
You are right that on this panel, we have focused only on a small segment of the activities that are going on. I can say for the cable industry, there's an entire initiative through SCTE and SEMI program to work on the overall efficiency of the networks themselves and the footprint of the entire enterprise as a whole. And the industry has recognized that energy efficiency by design is imperative for all enterprises going forward. So I apologize if we didn't have the time or the focus to cover the entirety, but I just wanted to give you an example that although we focused on boxes and television screens, that's not all that's going on.
I suppose we do know that time limits impede innovative discussions, if that's fair to say, because we are at the end of our hour at this point. So let me join you in thanking the panelists for their contributions and discussion. Thanks, everybody.
Very nice. Hey, great to meet you. Yeah, likewise. Nice to meet you. Job well done. Yeah, likewise. All right.
I'm a big fan of California.
Oh, you should move there. You should move. Very nice to meet you. I'll see you in DC.